Okay, so welcome to the deep dive, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
You know you're here because you want to really understand what's happening in crypto
Right.
and cut through all the noise,
Exactly.
all those news feeds and everything else.
Yeah, so much information out there.
And today we're diving deep
We are.
into all the news from around March 28th, 2025.
That's right.
So our goal is to really pull out the things that really matter.
The key insights, yeah.
Developments that you need to know about
Look,
what they actually signify.
yeah, what it means for the average listener.
For you.
Yes,
So we've got a lot to cover.
we do.
We've gone through, a ton of reports and analyses
Yeah.
covering everything from the economic climate to regulatory actions,
Yeah.
institutional moves,
Uh-huh.
even looking at practical ways crypto is being used today.
That's right.
And, when you look at all this information,
Yeah.
what's really interesting is there's a bit of a surprise. When you think about it. Mm-hmm.
You might think, okay, when traditional markets get all, shaky,
Yeah,
Bitcoin's going to follow suit, right?
makes sense.
But the information we've got
Yeah.
suggests something a little different.
Interesting.
So let's get into it.
All right, let's dive in.
All right, so first, let's set the stage.
Okay.
Let's look at the broader economic context.
Yeah, what was happening
And around that time,
in the world?
there were some interesting things going on.
Right.
We saw tariffs continuing to put pressure on U.S. stocks,
Yeah, pushing them down.
pushing them into the negative.
Uh-huh.
At the same time, reports showed a rise in those initial jobless claims in the U.S.
Yeah, those reached 224,000.
And all of this is happening while Q4 GDP growth was actually revised upwards a bit.
Right, from 2.3% to 2.4.
So you've got this kind of contradictory picture emerging in traditional
That's
finance.
some mixed signals for sure.
But here's where things get really interesting for crypto.
Despite all this pressure on U.S. stocks from those tariffs,
Right.
Bitcoin stood out for its stability.
That is interesting.
So you got to wonder,
Yeah, what's going on there?
what's going on there? Why is it behaving differently?
Yeah, what's driving that?
Exactly.
Well, one idea is that Bitcoin is increasingly being seen as a hedge.
Oh, yeah, against that volatility.
Right, exactly. As a hedge against that volatility we were just talking about. When stocks are declining because of things like tariffs
Right.
and Bitcoin is holding steady,
Yeah.
it really strengthens that idea that some investors are seeing it as a safe haven.
A safe haven in times of uncertainty,
It's
which leads us to the potential long-term consequences of those tariffs.
right. What could happen down the line?
Because analysis from that time suggested that these trade tensions could lead to some inflationary pressure.
Oh, that's interesting.
And this is where Bitcoin's history as an inflation hedge becomes relevant again.
Right.
Do you remember that?
I do recall that, yes.
We even had a real-world example playing out then.
Oh, really?
Ferrari apparently increased their prices by 10%
Wow, 10%.
because of those tariffs.
To counteract the impact, yeah.
It's like a textbook example of how these trade policies can lead to inflation.
Yeah, exactly.
So if those pressures continue to build,
Right.
Bitcoin with its limited supply
Yeah.
could be seen as an asset that can better hold its value compared to traditional currencies that are prone to devaluation.
Yeah, makes sense.
So you've got this situation where tariffs are shaking up the stock market.
Okay.
You've got the potential for rising inflation.
Yeah.
And Bitcoin is just sitting there like a rock,
Holding strong.
holding strong.
Interesting.
But it's not just about those big macroeconomic forces.
Right.
We're also seeing some serious activity within the crypto space itself.
Yeah, from the players in the game.
Especially institutions.
Wow.
One of the big stories from March 28th was that huge surge in BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF holdings.
What huge surge.
Their global allocation fund
Right.
increased their holdings of the Bitcoin IBIT ETF by 117%.
Wow, 170%.
To put that in perspective,
Yeah.
they went from about 198,000 shares in July 2024
Okay.
to over 430,000 by October that same year.
Wow, that's a pretty significant change.
Yeah, and their exposure in dollar terms grew to $47.4 million.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
So what does that tell us?
I mean, when you've got a giant like BlackRock
Yeah.
managing billions of dollars in assets, making a move like that,
17.8 billion to be exact.
17.8 billion.
That makes you wonder what they're thinking.
It makes you think they're taking Bitcoin seriously.
Yeah, as a long-term investment.
Right. It's not just a speculative bet anymore.
It seems like they're seeing real value there.
And it's not just them.
No, it's not.
We were also seeing this trend of Bitcoin and Ethereum spot ETFs getting approved and actively traded.
Right, opening the doors for more mainstream investors.
Expanding access, for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
So the big institutions are getting involved.
Yeah, they're stepping in.
And that's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
But it's not just about how people are investing.
Right.
The whole regulatory environment is changing, too.
Yeah, that's always a big factor in crypto.
Yeah, there were some really interesting developments on that front.
Good luck, what?
So one big one was the Senate passing that resolution to invalidate the IRS DeFi broker rule.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
That was under the Congressional Review Act.
The CRA, yeah.
Which basically lets Congress overturn agency rules.
Right.
And it passed with a pretty big bipartisan vote.
70 to 27.
Which is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, that's pretty significant.
This move was generally seen as a win for the DeFi sector.
Yeah, it could really help ease some of those regulatory burdens.
Exactly.
Less friction can lead to more innovation.
Right, and there were also some efforts to bring more clarity to the space.
Oh yeah, like what?
Representatives Emmer and Soto reintroduced the Securities Clarity Act, which was aimed at drawing a clearer line between digital assets and the investment contracts tied to them.
Right, because right now the classification of many digital assets is a bit murky.
Yeah, it creates a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, exactly.
This act aimed to establish a clearer framework.
So everyone knows the rules of the game.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
So clarity in regulation is key.
It is.
For the growth and adoption of this technology.
Absolutely.
And beyond legislative action.
Right.
We also saw some interesting signals from the political world.
Oh, yeah. What were those?
There were reports of President Trump endorsing Senator Cynthia Lummis.
Oh, yeah. The crypto advocate.
Who even proposed that the U.S. establish a strategic Bitcoin reserve.
That's interesting.
And then you had Paul Atkins, who's known for his pro-innovation views, being nominated as the SEC chairman.
Oh, wow.
So these moves could suggest a more favorable regulatory landscape for crypto going forward.
Potentially, yeah.
But of course, it's never a completely unified picture. There are always different viewpoints. We also saw reports of Senator Elizabeth Warren expressing concerns about some of this recent crypto legislation.
Oh, yeah, I remember them.
So there are definitely ongoing debates and discussions about the best way to regulate cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, it's a complex issue with a lot of different perspectives.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
Now let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
We've talked about the financial side, the regulatory side, but we're also seeing blockchain and cryptocurrencies being used in real-world applications.
Yeah, it's going beyond just trading and speculation.
Exactly. It's becoming more mainstream.
Yeah, it's maturing.
A great example of this is Ripple's partnership with Chipper Cash.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
They're working together to make cross-border payments easier in Africa.
Right.
They're already serving millions of users.
5 million across 9 countries.
That's huge.
Yeah, it is.
By using blockchain, they're making transactions faster and cheaper.
Right, which is a game changer in regions where traditional banking can be difficult or expensive.
Exactly.
It makes a big difference.
And it's not just payments.
Right.
The way we use stablecoins is changing too.
Oh, yeah, how so?
JP Morgan came out with a prediction about interest-bearing stablecoins. They think this segment could grow from about 6% to as much as 50% of the whole stablecoin market.
Wow, 50%.
Because these stablecoins can offer yield to holders.
Right, so they're not just for trading anymore.
Exactly, they're becoming more like traditional financial products.
Yeah, interesting.
So we're seeing crypto move from being purely speculative to having these real-world applications, which is a big step forward for the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, definitely a sign of maturity.
Now, there is one piece of news that seemed to go against the grain a bit.
Oh, yeah, what was that?
It involved GameStop.
Oh, GameStop.
They announced a Bitcoin investment and raised $1.3 billion.
Okay.
But their stock price actually dropped by 22%.
What? So it didn't have the effect they were hoping for.
It seems like investors were worried about stock dilution after the capital raise.
Oh, so it wasn't really about Bitcoin itself.
Right. It was more about those traditional market dynamics.
Yeah, investor sentiment still plays a big role.
Even when crypto is in the mix.
Absolutely.
So when we zoom out and look at the bigger picture,
yeah,
there are some clear patterns that emerge.
Like what?
We've talked about Bitcoin's resilience during tough times in the traditional markets,
Right.
and that suggests a potential decoupling is happening.
Mhm.
It's really making a case for itself as a store of value.
Especially during times of uncertainty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just investors and everyday users who are paying attention.
Right.
Policymakers are getting involved, too.
Oh, yeah.
In South Korea, a bunch of officials disclosed their crypto holdings,
I remember that.
which totaled about $9.8 million.
Wow, that's significant.
So this shows growing acceptance and familiarity with digital assets,
Even among regulators.
which could have big implications for future regulations.
Yeah, it might also reflect a generational shift in investment preferences.
Absolutely.
Very interesting.
And remember JP Morgan's prediction about those interest-bearing stablecoins? That potential surge
Right.
really highlights how sophisticated the crypto ecosystem is becoming.
Yeah, it's evolving quickly.
The fact that stablecoins are offering yield
Right.
and competing with traditional financial products,
It shows how much potential this industry has.
it's maturing for sure.
Yeah.
And when you look at the numbers behind BlackRock's increased Bitcoin ETF holdings,
Right.
it's really striking.
What do you mean?
That 117% increase
Yeah.
translates to about a 91% growth in just one quarter.
That's a lot of buying power.
Yeah, and when you consider the potential for inflation,
Right.
driven by things like those tariffs we talked about, Bitcoin's fixed supply of 21 million coins becomes even more important.
Yeah, that scarcity could drive up demand if people see it as a way to protect their money.
Exactly.
Big
So
time.
to sum it all up,
Yeah.
we're seeing Bitcoin show incredible resilience amid all this economic uncertainty.
Huh.
The big players like BlackRock are getting involved,
Yeah.
which signals growing confidence in its long-term value.
Right.
Positive developments on the regulatory front are creating a more stable environment.
Yeah.
And the real-world applications of blockchain and cryptocurrencies are growing.
Yeah. It's becoming more than just hype.
It's becoming part of our everyday lives.
Exactly.
And that's a big deal.
It is.
So we started this deep dive
Wow.
to help you understand the most important developments in crypto.
Right.
And hopefully we've done that. We've given you a clear picture of what's happening.
A shortcut to understanding this complex market.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But this all leads to a really important question for you.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Given Bitcoin's potential shift towards being a hedge asset
Right.
and all this institutional interest,
Yeah.
what fundamental assumptions about our traditional investment portfolios might we need to rethink?
That's a good question.
It's something to really consider because these trends could completely change how we think about financial markets.
Right. And the role of digital assets.
Exactly.
It's a fascinating time to be following this space.
It is.
For sure.
So thank you for joining us on the deep dive.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everyone.
I'll see you next time.